Hey, welcome aboard. I want to thank everybody for helping me get to the 25 subscribers. The new goal that we're setting, and I'm probably going to start a new one in October. I honestly thought I'd get to this one. It's 15 hashtag Dark Brandon Rises in the comments. This is actually a pro Biden hashtag. And I think the reason why I haven't gotten is I think most of the people that comment on my videos are the actual, delusional MAGA supporters. I really do. But that's the new goal. The topic for this one, hold on a sec. There we go. The topic for this one is what we should be doing as people on the blue is we should be looking at the failures in Russia, the failures to prosecute the war, and the failures as a country. And we should be looking at those as a warning sign for what's going to happen if we keep letting Republicans get in, especially this new MAGA crowd. Let's go ahead and get that loaded up.
Obviously there is a reality of war. There is the reality of the politics back at home. But it also feels like some of Putin's allies around the world are tiring of this, that they're beginning to break with him, whether they're actually tired of it or they think Russia is weakened and weaker than they previously thought it could be with a military the size of what we had presumed the military to be. Indian Prime Minister Modi last week said now is not an era of war. Chinese President Xi Jinping has, quote, questions and concerns. Turkish President Erdogan this week says Russia should return Ukraine's land. I want to quote, the lands which were invaded will be returned to Ukraine. This is what is expected. This is what is wanted. I mean, in no uncertain terms, speaking to Putin, how meaningful is it that those men are saying these things at this juncture?
Well, when you run a regime which is based upon the idea that might is right and power is everything, and then you lose a war, obviously you're going to lose credibility around the world. I mean, Putin doesn't actually stand for anything except for the idea that Russia is a superpower, right? The way he's prosecuting this war involves horrible crimes. The things that I saw in Ukraine involved, crimes against humanity, things that amount to genocide. And so in addition to the leaders you list, there are also the people who care about things like that, as well as the Ukrainians themselves. But the fundamental point, I think, with the men that you're mentioning is that he's losing the war. China would be happy to, was happy to have a quick war, but it's not getting a quick war. Just like the Russian population would be happy to have a TV war, but now it's not getting a TV war. And I agree with you, that's why we're at a turning point.
What of Zelensky? You saw him last week. He spoke virtually at the United Nations. Do you have a sense of how much he was prepared for something like this to happen, to the degree that Putin has been sort of telegraphing a ramping up, if you will?
Yeah. We have to distinguish between how we react and how the Ukrainians react, because much of the rhetoric that Putin uses is meant to push our buttons. For example, when he tries to connect the nuclear threat to other things, he's been talking about nuclear war for 6 months, basically uninterrupted, but he knows that that will push our buttons, and he hopes that that will stop us or hinder us or at least slow us down from helping the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians, on the other hand, have already factored this in long ago. They read the Russians much more quickly and effectively than we do, and their fundamental reaction is, this just means we have to win the war by the fall.
Their tenacity and resilience in this has been absolutely stunning. I want to ask you about one last thing as we talk about Putin's standing in Russia. There have been reports from inside Russia that Russian businessmen are dying from suicide, accidents. It sounds like it's the FSB at work, eliminating people who may be threats to Putin's power. 10 people have died under suspicious circumstances since the war in Ukraine began. Do you draw any lines there in terms of Putin's paranoia, his power grabs? I mean, how do you frame that in the context of this war?
I think we're in the late stages of a regime where the various entities among which Putin kept the peace are now beginning to sort of centrifugally separate from one another. There are the Chechens, there's the FSB, there's the army with its loss in prestige, there are the businessmen. There are a lot of things going on. In addition to the deaths, things are blowing up inside Russia. Military recruiting posts are being set on fire, and that's not all the Ukrainians. So it's hard to do the criminology, but I think you're basically right that what we're seeing is that a man who is always the arbiter is losing his ability to hold things together.
That seems both like perhaps there is light at the end of the tunnel, but also like we are in a very unstable and precarious moment.
They always fall. The dictators always fall. You just have to be ready.
Okay, so this is kind of going out to the president and the Speaker of the House. This is the thing we should be taking away from this, okay? And you can look at the similarities between Russia, Putin and Trump. Um, you look at any of these people that stand up and tell the truth about Trump, and you see them attacked. I mean, look at what they're doing to Liz Cheney and the others. Um, just how quickly they attack, how quickly they throw them under the bus. And it was the same thing during Trump's election. Any of the reporters that told the truth, how quickly he turned on them. There were actual reporters that were covering the presidential race. The Secret Service had to actually put protection on them because Trump put their lives in danger, you know, from his bullshit. And then you look at them talking about how you've got these people that might be standing up to Putin and they're just disappearing. I mean, the level of it is different, but it's the same thing. And then you look at how bad the military has failed. You absolutely look at how bad the military has failed on this. And this is the biggest thing I kind of want to get to in this video is you look at the Republicans, they want to privatize everything. They created these fucking military contractors and they took jobs away from the military. And the thing is it costs more money. It absolutely costs more money. It was not cheaper. It's wasting tax dollars. And some things might be a little different than the military, but basically when you look at Blackwater and some of the other stuff, a lot of these military contractors that were getting a lot of the contracts, they've had to change their names because they were doing so much illegal shit. And so it was a way. And then you look at Putin, he has military contractors and they've done some horrible shit. Again, the level of it is different, you know, because the GOP, the Republican Party, is kind of like a bad copy of Russia. And you look at the economy of Russia. They were talking on Morning Joe this morning. I don't have that. There is no clip of it. I was just watching it an hour ago. And they were talking about how Russia had an economy about the size of Texas. And that was before all the sanctions. And you look at the Republicans that run these states, pretty much across the board, education is worse, healthcare is worse, the economy is worse. The last Republican president who balanced a budget was Eisenhower, and that was like 70 fucking years ago. And to be fair, the only reason I think he was able to balance the budget is because he had like a 90% tax bracket, but he was the last Republican that could balance a budget. And when you look at how poor this military is doing, you have to ask yourself, this is what I've been, kind of asking. Is the reason their military doing so bad just because of bad leadership? Or is it because you've got somebody like Putin who's just stealing this money that should be going to make their military better and they're putting it in their pockets? And when you look at Republican policies, maybe not every Republican, but it's across the board. They want to take money out of the system and put it in their pockets. I mean, you had these Republicans, they were coming out and bitching because we were going to, Biden wanted to pay off some student loans and help out ordinary people. And you look at all these Republicans that got loans. I mean, they weren't student loans, maybe, but they got loans and then they had those written off and forgiven. The Republican model across the board is the Russian model. And when you are voting for Republicans out there, the modern day, and I would say this goes back to at least Bush Jr. Maybe the Reagan era, maybe before. I don't know. There's a couple books out right now, and they're talking about how the embrace of horrible people by Republicans goes back to Nixon, and then they spell it out. But this grifting, at least goes back to Bush Jr. because uh, he put Dick Cheney in as the vice president, and he put in policies. He had Rumsfeld put in policies, and then when the war finally started at the Defense Department, They put in these policies, they put in these procedures. And then when they actually started the war and went into Iraq, the only company that qualified right out of the bat was Dick Cheney's old company, Halliburton. And you had people that during the first Gulf War, when Papa Bush was running it, they could get contracts for oil and other stuff. They couldn't qualify. They had to go running to Halliburton. So, I mean, you can go back and look. This is not a recent thing. This is not a Trump thing. It's been around for a while. But this money that they're taking out of the system and lining their pockets with, and you take a look at these wars. You know, the war in Iraq was a disaster. It basically unleashed Iran. It created all these problems we're dealing with now. You take a look at Afghanistan. It was a disaster. And there was talk back in the time, like when we first invaded Afghanistan, there was a guy. He could have been the Zelensky. I can't remember the guy's name, but he was up in the north. This is a guy that the whole country would have followed. He could have been a Zelensky, and he got killed. And now, whether, I don't know if we were involved in it. I don't know if we turned a blind eye to it. And the same thing, like you take that war in Afghanistan, there were at least, I think, 2 times where we had the Taliban cornered. We could have ended that problem one way or another. And one of them, they were allowed to escape in cars, and it was a line of cars that was so long you could see it from with the naked eye from orbit, they were saying. And then the other thing is there was an airlift, and there were military people that they interviewed, and they said there is no way this happened without somebody giving, it was just too noticeable. This was not like some rogue plane that was flying under the radar. It was a major airlift operation. They go, there's no way they got out of there without some kind of a higher up okaying it in the American military. And so we let them go. And then as soon as, and Trump, he set up the withdrawal from Afghanistan. And then as soon as we withdraw, I don't even think that country could stand for like a week, let alone a couple days. But yet now you look at the Democrats, they set up the Ukraine, and the Republicans did everything they could to fuck that up. Between Trump and the members of Congress, they did everything they could to fuck that up. But when you look at Biden's handling of the Ukraine, my God, they are kicking ass and they are taking names. This is not just us pumping money in so the Republicans can line their pockets. He's actually getting stuff done. And this is what we need to fear. This is what you guys need to be running on. The Republicans back in the 80s, they did this commercial called A Morning in America. Well, the Democrats need to do a new one. They absolutely need to do a new one. They need to do, hey, it's a morning in America. We're waking up from a meth nightmare created by the Republican parties and their cult leader, Donald Trump. You guys need to start putting stuff like that up on the air. And if you guys won't do it, maybe the Lincoln Party will have the balls to do it. But yeah, that's just what we're going. But you look across the board, Nancy Pelosi did this where she stood up and talked about how all roads lead to Russia with Trump. Well, you guys need to basically look at the roads from Russia that lead to the Republican Party, the GOP, the MAGA people. Um, and you just need to take a look at it because people need to be warned. And how are they going to be warned if people like you aren't stepping up and telling them what's going on? Okay, that's the video. Leave all comments down below. And I just want to thank everybody. You have made this little thing great. Thank you. Like, share, and subscribe the video. Subscribe to the channel. Peace out, and I hope everybody has a great day.